the mother of all living. The first thing I knew was the light, not the sun, but the source of it. I opened my eyes and there was no fear, only a vast, blooming recognition. I was the last piece of a perfect song, my creator. To be known by him was to be complete. And then there he was, Adam. When I first saw him, it was like looking into a mirror. I hadn't known the mirror even existed. He didn't just see me, he knew me. He said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." In his eyes I saw the reflection of the Father's smile. We were two parts of one heartbeat, walking through a world that was perfect because he was in it with us. Eden wasn't a cage, it was a sanctuary of peace. Every breath was a prayer and every step was a conversation with the Father. He was our everything. We didn't need to understand why the world was beautiful. We only needed to live in the beauty he gave us. There was one boundary, not a tree of poison, but a threshold of the soul. The Father told us, "For in that day thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." He wanted us to know only good, to grow into maturity in his timing, protected by his wisdom. I was resting near the center of the garden when the light changed. It wasn't a shadow, but a sudden blinding brilliance. He stood there, the angel of light. He was so beautiful I thought he was a messenger with a new blessing. He was magnificent, a being of shimmering radiance, mimicking the very glory of the Father. He spoke with a voice like a silver bell, echoing the truth, but twisting the melody. He looked at me with such feigned compassion and asked, "Yea, hath God said ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" I answered him with the truth I cherished. I told him we could eat of the trees, but of the tree in the midst of the garden, God had said we must not touch it lest we die. But the angel laughed, a sound of beautiful, terrible gold. He looked into my soul and whispered the words that ensnared my heart. "Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." I looked at the promise of that knowledge. I didn't want to leave my Father. I wanted to be more like the one I loved. I wanted to see the world through the Father's eyes. I thought I was reaching for more of God. I took the knowledge into my soul. But as the knowledge flooded into me, the garden didn't get brighter. It stayed the same, but I was different. The colors began to hurt. The silence of the trees felt like a judgment. I went back to Adam. He was waiting for me under the shade of the cedars, his face still full of that innocent morning light. I felt a pang of such sharp, sudden grief looking at him, because I knew that once I spoke, that light would leave him too. "Adam," I whispered. I held the weight of my new sight out to him. I told him that the angel had promised we would be like the Creator. I didn't want to be a God alone. I couldn't bear the thought of a world where I knew the depths and he only knew the surface. I gave it to him, and as he took it, I watched the veil fall from his eyes. We looked at each other, and for the first time, we didn't see the image of God. We saw our own frailty. We saw that we were naked. The harmony was broken. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. We tried to hide. Imagine that, trying to hide from the one who wove our very souls. We stitched leaves together to cover our shame, but the shame wasn't on our skin. it was in our hearts. When we heard the sound of the Father walking in the garden in the cool of the day, we didn't run to meet him, we trembled. The consequences weren't just words, they were a restructuring of the world. He spoke to me of sorrow and of conception, that the joy of bringing life would now be birthed through a gateway of pain. He spoke to Adam of the ground being cursed, that the earth would no longer give its bounty freely, but would demand sweat and struggle in return for bread. Then came the departure. I remember the gate, I remember the cherubim, and the flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. As we stepped out into the dust, I felt the connection snap. I turned back one last time. I didn't see a cage closing. I saw a father protecting the tree of life from children who weren't ready to live forever in their brokenness. I watched the man who once walked with God like a brother become a man who fought the earth like an enemy. I watched Adam's back bow under the heat of the noon sun. His hands, which had once gently named the flowers, were now cracked and stained with dark soil of the wilderness. He toiled until his breath was a ragged sob. It broke my heart to see the king of the garden become a servant of the dust. But then came a miracle. In the midst of our exile, life returned. When I held my firstborn Cain in my arms, I cried out, I have gotten a man from the Lord. I thought he was the promise. And then came Abel, as gentle as the lambs he tended. I saw the garden in their eyes. I did not know that the knowledge I brought back to Adam would bear such bitter fruit in our children. I saw the restless dark fire in Cain's eyes, the same flickering fire I had seen in the angel of light. I remember the silence of that field. It wasn't the peaceful silence of Eden. This was a heavy, cold silence. When Adam and I found him, when I saw the blood of my son soaking into the very earth God had cursed, I felt the world break all over again. The first death. Not an animal to clothe us, not but a brother's hand against a brother. I held Abel's cold hand and I realized the true weight of what it meant to know evil. It was the sight of one child lying in the dust and the other wandering into darkness with a mark upon his brow. After Abel was returned to the dust, and Cain was lost to the wandering shadows, a great winter settled over my soul. We had other sons and daughters, many children who filled our tents and labored beside us. But there was a hollow space that no laughter could fill. But our Father is a God of the second breath. When I felt the stirring of life once more, I named him Seth, for I said, God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. With Seth, the air seemed to clear. I watch him now and I see a different kind of strength. Not the strength of the fist, but the strength of the heart. Through him, the line of the Father remains unbroken. I know now that my story didn't end at the closing of the garden gates. I look at Seth and I see the long golden thread of a promise reaching forward through the ages. I am Eve, the mother of all living. I know that from my own flesh, through the line of his son, a deliverer will come. He will be the one to truly face the angel of light. He will be the one to heal the ground and wipe the tears from the eyes of my children. I traded the garden for a choice, and I felt the sting of the fall. But through Seth, I see the path home. The night is long, but the morning belongs to the Father. All praises